Welcome to the Luton Repair Network, and this video is all about repairing a guitar stand. Now, as you might be able to see, the mechanism for raising and lowering the guitar stand head comprises of this little lever, and if I zoom in close you might be able to see just here that the fulcrum pin for that lever runs through the plastic housing here, but the plastic has broken off. This is often a problem with plastic items, and it's really poor design, and the normal response to this, I guess, would be just to throw it in landfill. But actually I'm going to show you that you can do quite a clever little repair using some sheet metal and stop this going to landfill, getting more years of use out of the product. And here's how it's done. This is the dismantled lever, and hopefully you'll be able to see the fulcrum pin just here. This is the part of the lever that engages with the rising and falling stand to lock it in place. And you can also see here that there's a spring. In a sense, the spring is the cause of the damage to the plastic. It's just put a lot of strain on the pin and broken it away. Now here you can see the housing where the lever fits inside this recess here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make and fit a very thin sheet metal sleeve that will line that and then take the fulcrum pin and hopefully give quite a few years of service. Now there's a little screw in there which secures the housing to the stand, and we're just going to use that screw to secure the little metal sleeve in place. So the first thing to do is to measure the housing here where the metal sleeve is going to sit. So what we're going to use for the repair is just a sheet of very thin galvanized steel. In a sense, the thinner the better. This is 0.5 of a millimeter in thickness, and you can get small sheets of this from your local DIY store. You could also use sheet aluminium or sheet brass, which are a bit softer, easier to work, but more expensive, and probably won't hold the pin quite as well. The width of the strip of metal is going to be something like, well, 40 millimeters, and we need to measure the three sides of the housing so that we get the right. So let's say 25 deep. That's times 2, that's 50, and then the width, which is 15. So 65, I'm probably going to just cut it to 70 millimeters. So 70 millimeters by 40 millimeters. So I've got the metal marked out, nothing sophisticated, just a Sharpie and a ruler. And we're going to cut that out using a tool called tin snips or metal shears. Now there are two common types that you're going to find for sale. These are the traditional tin snips, and they require you to use your whole hand and your fingers to open and close, and I would say probably fairly difficult to use. You can also buy these, which are called aviation snips, and they're spring-loaded, so you don't have to open them as well. And they are easier to use, commonly available in most tool stores and DIY stores. So we're just going to cut the sheet metal out of the sheet. There we go. Now, sheet metal, once you cut it, has got very sharp edges. So always best to just run a small file over the edges and the corners, just so that you don't cut yourself, and if you leave the metal hanging around, nobody else cuts themselves as well. just to take the sharpness off. Now, I've just marked on the piece of metal a line across where we're going to bend this into a U shape, or at least start to bend it. Now, normally I'd use a vise and some slightly more specialized equipment, but I'm just going to show you that you can do this quite easily just with a few simple hand tools. If you have a table, obviously you need to cover it, stop it getting scratched, but you can quite easily just use a G-clamp to secure a piece of wood to a table. I'm just going to do that using my bench here, and I'm using a hold down clamp, but really it could work easily, just as easily with a G-clamp. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just clamp the piece of metal under the end of a piece of wood like this. Now, this piece of wood is the thickness of the housing width. It's the same thickness, and so we can use that to shape shape the wood. So I'm just going to clamp that down firmly. And the metal is protruding the amount that I want, and I'm just going to very simply bend it up with my fingers, and then we're going to take it out, and you can see the metal is bent quite easily, perhaps not 90 degrees exactly, but not more or less. So we're now going to bend the other section back. So I'm going to move the wood back to the edge, and again, I'm going to clamp it in place, and then going to bend the metal just using my thumbs, pushing down. And now we've got a U-shaped piece of metal like that. Now the two sides are unequal at the moment, but that doesn't matter. We're going to trim those to shape and to size once we're ready to do that. Now we need to secure the metal component into the housing, and as I said, we're going to use the screw that is already there and secures the plastic part here to the metal tube. So what we need is first of all to mark the metal where we're going to drill it, and then we need to select a drill that will be slightly larger than the diameter of the threaded part of the screw, but not so large that the head of the screw won't hold it in place. So I've already measured that and selected a 5mm drill bit for that. And then I need to just work out how far from the edge of the metal we're going to drill the hole. So it looks to me like 12mm from the edge of the metal to the center of the hole. That's good. And then just drilling into a piece of scrap wood so as not to damage the bench. So I've just drilled through, and that should now line up with the screw hole. Able to then screw the thing in place. Now we're not quite ready to fit the lever yet. Firstly, we need the hole for the pin, the fulcrum pin of the lever to fit through, and then we also need to just shape the edges of this so that there are no sharp edges to catch, and also just so it looks a little bit more professional. Now to first of all drill the hole for the fulcrum pin. On the plastic housing, I can see where that pin was. Half of the hole is broken away, but the other half is still there, so that acts as my guide. And I just need to drill with a 3mm drill. That's the diameter of the pin. I've just measured that, but you could just compare it if you don't have a device for measuring the diameter of something. You can just compare it to the thickness of the drills that you've got and select one which is just very slightly smaller than the pin itself. I've put a piece of scrap wood inside there so that when I drill through, it's not going to bend the metal over. And so I'm just going to through one side and then through the other. Okay, so I'm drilling into the wood there, which is why I'm comfortable to have my hand holding it. But obviously be very careful if you are drilling, and don't go through too far. I'm going to use a Sharpie. In fact, I've already marked this side. You may be able to see it, just so that I can get the shape of the metal to conform to the original shape of the plastic housing. Parts of it are broken away, of course they're no longer there, but you should be able to judge how to cut it. I'm going to take the housing out now, and you might be able to see that the line of the profile of the housing is marked on the metal. That's why we made the metal component slightly larger than we actually needed, so that we could do that. So I'm going to cut that using the metal snips. Now the metal snips do bend the metal a bit. You might need to bend it back into shape, but you shouldn't have too much trouble doing that just with a pair of pliers. And then the next thing is to just file the edges of this smooth, and just to take off any sharp pieces, and also to try to keep it to the shape that you actually want. So now with the metal insert fitted and screwed in place, we just put the lever into place, and hopefully that should just push into there, and then the holes for the pin in both the lever and the metal housing should then just line up, which they do. And just going to test that with a smaller diameter nail just to make sure that it's all lined up, which it is. And then we're going to take the pin and reinsert that into that hole, just very gently tapping it. Okay, so now with the metal insert in place and the lever operating as it should against the spring, we can now put the top of the guitar stand into place and just check that it works, which it does. It's adjustable, and so then collapses as well. Now it doesn't necessarily look very pretty, but if you've got the pieces of plastic that were broken off, you can perhaps glue those back in place, or use one of these plastic modeling compounds to just make it look a bit prettier. But I'm not really worried about that. The aim here is just to keep the product functioning, to keep it out of landfill. And that's really what Luton Repair Network's all about. We just want to encourage people to develop a make, do and mend philosophy and learn how to do simple repairs. Obviously, you may not have a guitar stand that needs repairing, but hopefully the principles you can see are fairly simple. With a few simple tools, you can do some quite simple repairs to products and keep them going way beyond the life that perhaps their makers and designers intended. That's all for now. Thanks.